Today we're going to do a two-part lesson that pertains to songwriting, most likely applicable to singer-songwriters that accompany themselves on acoustic guitar, but maybe even some piano players, other instrumentalists might get something out of this. First thing we're going to do is take a basic chord progression, one that you've all played, just made up of C, F, and G chords. Then we're going to expand upon it so it sounds more interesting by using harmonic devices called secondary dominants, modal interchange, and some inversions to spice up that basic progression. And hopefully some of those devices you'll find useful in expanding upon your own progressions. Then in part two, we're going to take that the progression that we spiced up and try to reshape it with different playing styles. James Taylor, Elliott Smith, Jeff Buckley, a little Chet Atkins, Hendrix, so you can hear how the same progression can end up being the basis for different styles of songs, and hopefully have some fun with it. Okay, so we'll start part one here by, I guess, a little discussion on the importance of chords in a progression and how that can impact your song. If you were to sit around and analyze the chord progression of a song that gave you that goosebump feeling when you listened to it, like if you looked in a sheet music book, you're probably going to start seeing, at the moment of the goosebump factor, a chord that doesn't really belong to the key that the progression started in. So what we're going to do here today is take a C major total preschool basic progression made up of C, which would be the one chord, the chord built from the first note of the C major scale, F, F major, F is the fourth note of the major scale, that would also be the 4 chord in the key of C, and a G chord. And then, as I said, we'll start spicing that up with some of those fancier non-diatonic chords. Here are those 3 chords, C, F, and G, but in the order for this progression. C, G, C, F, F again, C, G, C. Okay, the secondary dominant thing, the name itself, secondary dominant, it's got the word dominant in it. And a dominant chord is a chord that's basically a major triad with one extra note added to it. Interval-wise, it's a flat 7. In any major key, if you take the 5 chord of that key, which in the key we're looking at right now, C major, the 5 chord would be a G chord. That chord you can naturally expand upon into a dominant 7. So what I'm going to do before we get to secondary dominants, I'm going to replace the G chord in our original progression with a G7 chord, so you can hear what that sounds like. Here's G7. And G7 again. Okay, so we just heard the effect a diatonic dominant 7th chord happens in a basic major key progression. What I want to do now is finally get a secondary dominant unleashed onto our progression. Basically, in this series of chords, if we take our C chord right before the F major chord comes up, we can replace that basic C chord with a C dominant 7th chord. So it has a little bit of tension that by the time the F chord comes up has a bit of a spicy feeling. So see if you can study that under your hands and see how that makes the progression less ordinary. Check it out. Now C dominant 7. Now back to regular C major. Okay, with the progression we got right now, we have 2 different versions of the C chord. Garden variety, C major chord, then a little spicier C dominant 7 chord. In our progression also, we have an F major chord that kind of sits there for 2 measures, not really going anywhere. So for the second measure of that F chord, I'm going to use a device called Modal Interchange, which is really using chords borrowed from a parallel mode or key. Meaning, we started in C major, I'm going to just steal a chord from C minor, F minor, and see what effect that has on my progression. Okay, F major, now F minor. Okay, if you study a songbook of maybe a piano-based band, like you got Queen, Elton John, Billy Joel, Bruce Hornsby, Beach Boys, even some Beatles stuff originated from the piano. If you look at the chord names, eventually you'll see a chord letter name with a slash and then another note name after it. That's an inversion. It's a chord that has a different note in the bass other than the root of the chord. So far, every chord we've played has been a root position voicing. What I want to do now is replace that root with another note in the same chord. So a C chord, you got C, E, G. An F chord, you got F, A, C. A G chord has G, B, D. C7, C, E, G, B flat. F minor, F, A flat, and C. In the progression I'm going to play right now, you're going to see me choosing different notes to put in the bass besides the root. See if you notice an interesting effect. C with its root in the bass, G with a B in the bass, C7 with a B flat in the bass, F with an A in the bass, F minor with A flat in the bass, C with G in the bass, then a regular G chord to C. That gives you a descending, half-step, chromatic bass line. Okay, so what we've done so far is we took a basic C, F, and G progression, and now we've enhanced it to be a giant C, G with a B in the bass, C7 with a B flat in the bass, F with an A in the bass, F minor with an A flat in the bass, C with a G in the bass, and then back to C. So it's probably already sounding much more interesting. In part 2, we're going to look at how different playing techniques and styles can further shape in this progression. Thanks a lot.